Hello, everyone. My name is Lawrence Mack, and I'm a librarian with LA County Library. And I welcome you to explore video conferencing platforms. So this program is supported in whole or in part by the U.S. Institute of Museum and Library Services under the provisions of the Library Services and Technology Act, administered in California by the State Librarian. And your presenter today is me. Again, I'm Lawrence Mack, and I will be presenting Explore Video Conferencing Platforms. So bear with me a second as I share my screen, and we will be on our way. Okay, so we're going to do Explore Video Conferencing Platforms. So let's move on to the next slide. So conference platforms. Staying in touch has never been easier. You can get it done with the available tools like recording, screen sharing, or whiteboard. With the advancement of video calls, you can take your conferences, classes, webinars, such as right now on Zoom, family meetings, even game night, to a new level with conference platforms. So video chat apps allow virtual communications, an essential tool as we've had to alter our social processes the last few years. So conference platforms have exploded in popularity, including Zoom, and also some other platforms like Webex and Google Meets, as we will see in the presentation. Now, let's cover first some common worries with video conference platforms. So there can be some worries as barriers to using video conference platforms. So the most important are technical issues. All right, so technical issues around things such as your internet connection or device issues. That can be a big barrier to enjoying video conferencing because without sufficient speed, without a sufficiently strong network signal, you might experience things like negative sound and image quality. All right, so the sound might not be coming through clear enough, or the video might not be coming through clear enough, or it might turn pixelated. So be sure that you're in an ideal location, somewhere with a strong internet connection, to avoid having sound or image quality disrupted, or even dropped or failed calls. So if the connection is bad enough, or if it suddenly cuts out, the webinar or conference on your device might suddenly disconnect because there's nothing connecting it to the other presenters. All right, so next you want to prepare your cameras and mics, if applicable, for your call. All right, so you want to, check your background and surroundings to maintain privacy and prevent intrusiveness into your life. So, if you want to keep wherever you are private, you can always have something like a virtual background or blur the background, or just choose a wall to sit in front of, so that's all the other participants can see. And also, being self-conscious on video is a real and valid concern, but that can also be mitigated with turning off the camera or turning off the audio, or other options as well. So advocate for your on-camera needs when possible, but know that these are all common worries that participants share on video conferencing platforms. So why use video conference platforms? Well, the obvious advantage is there's vastly improved communication. So you're attending from the comfort of your home, or in a coffee shop, or even halfway around the world, but doing these video conferencing platforms, these webinars, make it possible for you all to join me today learning about video conferencing platforms. You don't need to go anywhere special. All you need to do is log on to your platform, click the link, and you are wherever the presenter is. Another thing is it keeps meetings focused. So on video conferencing platforms, everything that's happening on the screen, that's what you're focused on. There isn't, like, say, a big meeting hall with lots of other people and maybe some other distractions to take your attention away from the meeting. Right. So it also helps build better relationships, especially with family, friends, colleagues, or just general get-togethers, especially with those closer relationships who are living physically farther away, and that might make it difficult to meet up in person. However, this removes that barrier by allowing everybody to meet up and see each other and hear each other rather conveniently. It also allows good collaboration. Again, it's very efficient, removing the travel factor from the planning, increases productivity, and also it's consistent. So this meeting platform, whichever one you use, it's pretty consistent because it has the same webinar rooms, it has the same interface. So everybody's already kind of prepared and everybody knows how to use it. Compared with if you're meeting up in a physical location, you might have to worry about the route. You might have to worry about finding parking and finding the correct location to meet up at. All right. So again, it also saves time and money and less traveling. That being said, there's something that can't be replaced by meeting face-to-face in person. So perhaps some of the nuance from facial expression or even from physical interaction is lost through video conferencing platforms. So each side has its pros and cons, and it's up to you to decide which one is more suitable for you. And then again, video allows more context with the tones and reduces chances of misinterpreting communication. Like, for example, if you're just doing a chat room with text-based grammar, that can also be confusing and distracting. So I think video conferencing platforms, it offers a solid balance between just talking on the phone or just doing a chat room or going to meet somebody in person. So it's a nice balance between that. So here's some of the video conferencing platforms that we'll touch on. So here are some of the more popular ones, and these are all free to use, but a lot of them have paid services for access to more tools and features, such as the amount of people that can join one room at a time. But everything we cover will be on the free version. So there's Webex, there's Zoom, which we're using right now. There's Skype, there's Zoho Meeting, there's Microsoft Teams, and also Google Meet. But besides these, there are a lot more video conferencing platform options out there. So if you're not a devout follower of one of these platforms, I would totally recommend you try out at least some of them to see which one suits your preferences. But as for myself, I feel like for video conferencing platforms, if you already have a friend base that uses one of these, then that's the one I would probably use. But if you don't have that yet, if you don't have that built-in constraint yet, feel free to try them all out and see which one best suits you. Now for video conferencing, you can also access video conference apps through a lot of different devices. So the first one, it's most common, is a laptop or computer because these devices, they support the largest range of these video conferencing apps. And oftentimes, laptops come with built-in webcams and microphones. And that basically makes it ready to video conference the moment it's out of the box. For desktop computers, you might need a separate webcam. So that's a small device that attaches to the computer, connects to the computer via USB. but then it has its own camera and microphone component, and you can basically just use that with any computer that has a USB port. All right, and then some people use dedicated microphones, but oftentimes there's built-in speakers with the webcams or headsets that you're using that make a separate microphone redundant. Now, if you're using a smartphone or a tablet, there's a really good chance that those also have a webcam and a microphone built in. And those are ready to go out of the box as long as that video conferencing platform is available as an app for that device. All right. And also, internet connection is also very important to consider, whether you're using Wi-Fi or wired or Ethernet connection. For Wi-Fi connections, it's best to sit as close to the router as possible. That makes the Wi-Fi signal stronger, which means less chance of a disruption to your webinar. All right, and if you're using cameras, if you're using the camera, lighting is very important. So that can help illuminate the speaker for everybody to see, or it might be too dark. So I'll also consider that as well when doing a video conference. Okay, so for these video conferencing platforms, we're gonna get started with them. We're gonna take a look at face-to-faces, getting down to business, and choosing the right app, comparing apps to find the best fit for you. Okay, so getting started. So again, there are free versions of those apps available. And when you're just starting out, when you're just using it, and for the majority of users, the free version is more than enough for your needs. So there might be some free trial versions of these apps, so just be aware. But the ones that we cover, like Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Webex, they usually have some sort of free option for people to use. And oftentimes, if you're accessing this using a web browser, just go ahead and search for that. And then there should be a link that lets you sign up for free. However, some platforms, such as Skype, they don't require an account or sign up to use their platform. So, for example, on Skype, you can totally just create a new meeting and a free video call, and then just send links to the people you want to join so that they can join in. Obviously, there's some limitations to this free version, but in a pinch, it's very, very useful if you don't have like the time to sign up, or you just want a really quick meeting. Skype offers a solution. Now, for most apps, they'll require some form of registration. All right, and that registration will oftentimes ask for either an email address or a phone number or both. Sometimes you might already have to have a certain kind of account to use a certain service. So for example, Google Meet, I believe requires a Google account in order to use. So you would need to have, for example, a Gmail account in order to use Google Meet. But for most of these services, you just need an email from any old email and or a phone number. And the way they register, they'll usually, once you input your email, they'll send a verification code to your email address, and then you'll just need to click on that link in email or enter that code to continue. And for many of these platforms, their interfaces are very, very similar to each other. So if you know how to use one of these, you pretty much know how to use the others. There just might be slight differences in the interface, but it's pretty intuitive to figure out once you've got the hang of at least one of them. So to start a meeting, these are the icons that you want to look for to start either a video chat or meeting. And as you can see, they're very similar. These are pulled from all of the different video chat apps and video conferencing apps that we touch on. And if you don't want to start a meeting at that moment, you can also schedule a meeting and add in your participants and the preset time to get things ready for a meeting. So if you schedule a meeting, you can do that in advance, and that'll take that lets you more time to prepare. Okay, so here's an example of how to create a meeting on Google Meets. So the options are to create a meeting right now, which is new meeting. You can start a meeting later or schedule a meeting in Google Calendar. Again, other platforms will look very similar with very similar options. So for example, on the creating a new meeting, you can insert like a code or link to start a meeting, or you can schedule a meeting for later. And basic requirements for meetings, if you're scheduling a meeting or creating a meeting, you'll need to enter some information. So the basic information that you might need to enter will be the date, the time, and perhaps the meeting description. You can also add security options if you like. So for example, you can add passwords to the meeting. So for example, for our Zoom meeting right now, the passcode is 123123, but you can add, whatever you'd like to be a password for your meeting. All right, and so once you enter all of that information, you can also start to invite people. And to do that, to invite people, you usually just need their email address. And once you enter that, it'll send an email address to those people. And there usually be a link or some kind of login instruction in the email for them to follow. Okay, so now that you've scheduled a meeting or are meeting now, it's time for face-to-faces. All right, so first, you want to make sure that the device you use, whether it's like a smartphone, laptop, or computer, it's compatible with the app. All right, so sometimes if you're using a phone or tablet, you'll find a compatible app on the App Store, whether it's the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. You'll just type in, say, Webex or Zoom or anything like that, and you can install it straight from the App Store. However, if you're using a PC or a Mac, you'll need to go to their website to download an app for some of these. For example, like for Webex or even for Zoom. Zoom offers a dedicated app as well that you can download to have on your computer to use. All right, and then sometimes the video chat technology will just open through a web browser. Like for example, in Skype, it doesn't need to download anything at all. They can just run the whole meeting through your web browser. So for example, if you're using Google Chrome or Mozilla Firefox or Safari, and you want to start a meeting on Skype, there's the option to just run everything through Chrome or Safari or Firefox. All right, and before you start your meeting proper, it's a good time to check your camera and your mics, and also how you'll enter the meeting. So usually they'll have some kind of video preview for you to see, to look at yourself, how you would appear on screen and how you would appear to other people. So you want to make sure that everything's presentable, that your background is presentable before you enter the meeting. Okay, and there are different display options. So sometimes on those video chat apps, those video conferencing platforms, you can use your personal preference to make the display your own, to customize it. So again, guest speakers can sometimes be maybe above you or beside you or in reverse, or they might even be larger or smaller than you. So again, you can see several different examples. People can be in evenly spaced small windows, or the speaker might be in a larger window and you might be in a smaller window on the side, or you can also move the windows around for some of these apps. So it's useful to configure it to something that you're comfortable using. All right, and also mic and camera access. So that's also important during your video conference. So preview screens should tell you if your mic is on or if it's detected. However, if a pop-up asks for mic or camera access, that usually means currently your mics or camera are not on and not working. So if you do want to like show your face, you can be sure to allow. You can also mute your audio and your camera separately. So for example, I could just stop my video, turn my camera off, and turn it back on at will. Now, however, for this webinar, mics and camera are disabled for participants, but you can always just start a practice meeting using any one of those platforms and try out the options for yourself. Okay, and you can also adjust your cameras and your mics through video and audio settings and options within the app or platform. In case of any issues at the beginning, just remember to stay calm and check those options first to make sure that they're all enabled, as basic or minor troubleshooting can often be fixed from these menus. So for example, a lot of these icons, as you can see on the unmute buttons and the start video buttons, there's that little downwards pointing arrow on the right side of each button. So this is for the Webex interface. If you click that downward facing button, then you can open up a menu, as you can see on those screenshots, that allow you to perhaps switch cameras or to switch speakers. Because sometimes you have more than one device attached to your computer that can output audio, or that can, record video. So it's important to have the correct one selected. And the interface is the same in Zoom as well. So there's that little downwards facing arrow on the right side of each button that you can click to bring up further options. All right, so now let's get down to business. Okay, so this is an example from Webex, but not all platforms are equal. So some features are only available on paid versions. So for example, for Zoom or even for Webex, they increase the amount of people who can attend simultaneously for paid versions. And then there's also other options that may or may not be available through a paywall, such as increased interactions and getting statistics and things like that. If you need different or multiple features for different versions, you can always use more than one app. So one important feature is the chat or Q&A area. So participants can ask their questions to be answered during the webinar. And I see that there are already some comments for the chat Q&A, and I will address those at the end of this presentation. All right, so screen sharing is another important feature. So there are often various options, like sharing your screen as is, or in my case right now, I'm sharing just my PowerPoint presentation. Now always be on the lookout for a toolbar seen there. So there will be some options for sharing your screen or other tools. So usually it'll be a button called share or new share or something like that. And when you click that, it'll open an interface for you to choose what to share. So usually you can share either your whole screen, which is you can see everything that's happening on the screen of the person who's sharing, or that person could just share one app, so one application. So for example, I'm just sharing my PowerPoint presentation, so that's what you're seeing. Now, you can also share files through these web conference platforms. So if whoever's running the meeting has enabled the sharing of files, then that's possible to share with other people so that they can download it. So for example, if it was a business meeting and they wanted to share a copy of their quarterly reports, then whoever's running that meeting could definitely just share and upload a PDF with the quarterly report so that everybody can access their own copy and do their own markup on it. Now, there's also a whiteboard feature available for some of these platforms. And this example is through Google Meet, but it's basically a feature that acts like a real life whiteboard. It allows you to write and type and draw on screen. So you can brainstorm or collaborate with colleagues or even family and friends to discuss ideas and visualize plans. So for example, this is an example of choosing where to eat dinner. So the whiteboard allows you to put things more intricate than just text. So for example, they just put a Venn diagram here, where to eat after work. So it's a decision between two restaurants, and then people can just type in their names and make a selection right there. So it's a much better process than just talking it over, where a lot of people are trying to talk at the same time. Okay, so similar to whiteboard is a tool for polling. So this example is from Zoom, and the layouts, again, I want to stress that the layouts for a lot of these tools on most of the video conferencing platforms are very, very similar. And once you pick one up, it's very easy to do another app, to use the same feature on another app. All right. But polls also make it easier if you're trying to find consensus for something, like choosing a restaurant later to eat for lunch. So if you do have polls that you want to ask your audience, it's also very much possible to create polls and administer polls. Right, and another aspect of video chatting is your background. So your background can totally make a difference. It can be more visually appealing. It can be on brand. So for example, as you can see, my virtual background is an LA County Library background. Or you can just blur yourself to blur out the background. So for example, if your background is maybe a little messy, or if there's distractions, like your background is an open window and there's people and cars going by, you probably want to just either blur the background or change it to something else so that it's not as distracting. All right, so another thing to look for is for raised hands, if that is a feature enabled in the meeting. So that kind of signals a participant has a question or something to say or add. And then for some of these platforms, other emojis are possible for fun or interactive reasons. So they can, like, for example, clapping hands or a smiley face, something like that. It's a quick way to solicit feedback or engagement from an audience. Especially in the absence of seeing everybody seeing everybody in a webinar or following the chat box as you go, because realistically our screens have limited real estate. So if there's more than a couple people in the meeting and everybody wants to talk at the same time, chances are you're not going to be able to see everybody clearly on the screen. So having these reactions or polls or raised hands, it's a good way for speakers to gauge audience reaction or feedback. All right, so another feature is recording. So many of these platforms allow recording the session, which records everything and downloads a video file. You can record for review or improvement or for practice. And again, you want to practice for, say, for example, mock interviews or a speech or something like that. You can definitely record yourself and then play it back to look at the recording and figure out what can be improved. And again, just a quick reminder that this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on YouTube for everybody to watch in about a week or so. Okay, so here's sort of a comparison table for webinar conferencing features. All right, so comparison table for the platforms that we discussed today and their features. And if they have an X, that means they do have that feature. And if they have a dash, that means they do not have that feature. So, so the one we're using right now is Zoom. And Zoom has quite a few of these features available for their free option. So they do have a whiteboard feature, a background feature, a recording feature. They can share the screen, share a window, and they also have reactions. And so as you can see, some of them are missing some features. So whiteboard is only available for about half of them. Changing backgrounds is available for all of them. And everything except for Google Meet can record the session. Polling and Q&A are only available for a few of them. And screen sharing is available for all of them, and as are reactions, except for apparently Google Meet. But most of these features that are not available, that's because they're locked behind paywalls for most of those. So those features can be unlocked by paying for an enhanced version of these products. Now, here's some other features to look out for when you're thinking of starting your own video conference. So your level of control is a huge bonus to traditional teleconferencing calls. So there's some things called breakout rooms. So if you're in a really large video conference, let's say you have upwards of 20 people or so, large groups can be broken up into smaller theme sessions. So that's a feature where people can be broken up into separate groups, maybe to discuss a particular topic, or to view their own separate presentation. It's useful for study sessions and more, especially let's say you're in a video conference for a course that's being taught, and then when the instructor wants everybody to break into groups to discuss a particular topic and come up with their own ideas, then that's what breakout rooms are for. So everybody's in their own separate room, and they can only interact with the participants in that room until whoever's managing the meeting has everybody back into the normal larger room. Okay, so second, you can also lock a meeting. So meetings can be locked by time, which means anybody trying to join the meeting after a certain time won't be able to access it. You can also limit it by the maximum number of participants. So you can limit a meeting to, say, the first 100 people who join. So this can be useful as some latecomers might not be caught up on everything, and so might start asking questions that the meeting manager doesn't want to slow down the meeting and go back over the topics that they had already gone over. All right, so there's also notes. So notes can be typed in real time as the meeting goes on. So some of these platforms have a note-taking feature that you can just use to keep a good record of notes. Now, participants can also be assigned different roles, like a host, or moderators, or polling coordinators. So participants can have different levels of responsibility. They can be in charge of, like, say, individual aspects of a meeting. So, for example, if they're a polling coordinator, that means they can administer polls, but in addition to their regular participant functions. All right, and usually the host has the most access. So basically they can access everything in a meeting, while normal participants can usually just access limited things like video and chat. You can also add or invite people to the event while the event's going on, and also control the mic and videos of participants. So for example, in this webinar, mics and video are disabled. So that's just to streamline the presentation. And also other options are dialing into meetings over the phone. So if there are participants with tech issues, or if they don't have internet access, they can still access the meeting just by using a phone to call in and listen to the audio of the meeting. And there's also closed captioning, which helps increase accessibility for many people. Okay, so again, choosing the right app. Again, here are the apps we covered and some basic information to help you choose. So, so for example, these apps that we covered: Skype, Zoom, Google Meet, Zoho Meeting, Webex, and Microsoft Teams. To register, as you can see, most of them require either a phone number or email. However, no sign up is necessary for Skype. All of them can be accessed through a mobile app, such as on your tablet or smartphone, or on the browser itself. So if you're using a browser like Safari or Google Chrome or Firefox, you can definitely just go to that app's website and download and use it as well. They all offer live chat, and as you can see, they all offer participants up to 100 people. But for the free versions, there's different time limits. So the time limits, for example, it looks like the stingiest platform for time is Zoho Meeting at 30 minutes. Then next there's Zoom with 40 minutes. And then all the way up to Microsoft Teams or Skype, which allow up to 24 hours for a video conference. Personally, that's a little long, but I guess if you're hosting some kind of marathon discussion or something like that, that might come in handy. And they all have most of the advanced features that I talked about in the presentation as well. So for choosing the right app, I think it's usually base it on the ease of access, what your friends might already be using, and also how long you want the meetings to go for. Okay, so some more basic tips for enhancing your video conferences. Remember, you can always choose to mute your camera or microphone. If you just need to take a moment during the presentation, feel free to do that. You might also want to check your surroundings. So you want to be in a quiet, well-lit surrounding. if there's too many people, if there's a lot of loud noises or other distractions, that might reduce the quality of the webinar, whether you're listening to it or you're trying to talk. Make sure you're in a conducive environment for presentation. You can always use more than one app because these apps are free. And you might want to play around with the apps and see which ones suit you best. Also, remember to check your connections. So, to make sure if you're using a Wi-Fi, you want to be as close to your Wi-Fi router as possible, and because that helps ensure the signal is as strong as possible. And if you're using wired internet, chances are that will be a more stable connection than Wi-Fi. But make sure that if you're moving around, make sure that the cord is long enough. Okay, and you want to wait until you're ready to go live. So if you're doing a presentation, make sure everything's ready. Make sure you're mentally prepared. Make sure you have all the materials you need before you start it. That can go a long way to having a smooth presentation. And again, if this is work related, again, there might be different protocols at your workplace if you're using this for work. So make sure you're clear on those protocols. Again, if you have questions about any topics presented during this presentation and you forgot to ask in the chat or Q&A, you can always speak to a librarian, or if you have any questions about anything at all, you're welcome to speak to a librarian. We're available through phone, through text, through email, and through Instant Librarian. And you're also welcome to come to any library in person, go to the reference desk, and we'll be happy to help you with your query. Here's some library resources, for example, that can help you with increasing your digital age experience to have an enjoyable time on a web conference or webinar or video chat. Okay, and that is the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you so much for attending. Now, if you have questions, if you have any comments, now's the time to put them on the Q&A or the chat, and I will attempt to answer those. Okay, so let me take a look at the Q&A. We'll get started. First one, will this webinar be available to review later? Yes, it is being recorded, and we will upload it to YouTube and email you a link to the video later. Okay, next question. Where is the video preview in Zoom? I've always used QuickTime Movie for that purpose. So for Zoom, you usually, when you start a webinar or before you want to join a webinar, right after you enter the video conferencing room, a pop-up should appear from Zoom with a video preview. So basically, it'll attempt to open the camera, and then you'll be able to see yourself and take a look at your surroundings, make sure everything's to your standard before you join the room. However, for our Zoom room, we don't have that preview because participant mics and video have been disabled for the event. But if you do start your own Zoom room, if you do start your own webinar, that preview should come up. Okay, next question. Can you demo how to change a background? Okay, So to change the video background, usually in the video button, there's that little arrow on the right-hand side. And then if I click that, then there's usually like video settings or video background, and then that lets me choose a virtual background. So for example, right now I can change it to, see, so this is a blurred version of my background, but I can also change it to different backgrounds, as you can see. Okay, and then if you want a custom background, all you have to do is upload a picture, and then that will usually appear as a background option. Okay, next question. What about the security of the video conferencing platforms? So for the security of the video conferencing platforms, they do encrypt their video conferencing. They do encrypt the data among the users, so it should be more difficult to hack into, and especially if a hacker doesn't know exactly, if they don't know your actual program details and they don't know your webinar details, it's very hard for somebody to hack into, to hijack a video conferencing webinar, especially if you have a password enabled. Okay, next question. In the recording feature, can both parties see that the session is being recorded, or is recording not readily known? For Zoom at least, if it's being recorded, it will let everybody know that this session is being recorded. And I believe that's true for most, if not all, of these video conferencing platforms. If the session is being recorded, it will let you know, so that you can take steps to protect your privacy if need be. Okay, next question. Can we receive the PowerPoint of this webinar? Yes, that will be included in the follow-up email. So the PowerPoint, as well as the link to the YouTube version of this video, will be included in our follow-up email. Okay, let's see. Q&A. Next question. Are there other training resources for video conferencing? For example, for a specific platform? Yes, I believe there are. So for the library, if you go to Gale courses or LinkedIn Learning, there are training resources for how to use, for example, just Zoom or just Webex. So let me post a link to that on our chat. So give me 1 second. Okay, and then in the chat. So here's the link, lacountylibrary.org/learn, and that is for and that's a link to LinkedIn Learning that you can access with your LA County Library card, and you can definitely find more detailed tutorials for a single webinar platform like Zoom or Webex. Okay, next question. In Zoom meetings, how can we unmute all participants except 2 speakers in separate location? So I believe this question may be, how can we mute all participants except for 2 speakers in separate locations? Now, the easiest way to do that is when you're creating the webinar, there will be an option to mute all speakers upon at the beginning, and you want to make sure that that's checked, okay, so that everybody's muted when they come in. And then for the 2 speakers, you want to make them, so for the speakers, you want to make them, oh, yes, and I just posted the links there as well. Okay, so you want to make the speakers, you want to make them at least panelists, because that's that allows them to unmute themselves. And then if you want to just make all participants muted, that would be the easiest solution, so that only panelists or moderators or speakers are able to talk. Okay, so how can we make platform? For this question, I'm not sure what it is, so can you clarify? So how can we make platform? Okay, next question. Where is the option to blur the background in Zoom? Okay, so to blur the background in Zoom, it would be next to the video button. In the video button, there's a little upwards pointing triangle on the right-hand side of the video button. If you click that little triangle, then it'll open up a small menu. Then you can just immediately click blur my background. And then that, so I'll just do it right now. So see, right there, that blurs my background. Okay, so now I'm going to change it back. Okay, platform for panelists. Okay, so to make somebody a panelist, that's usually when you are setting up the meeting. So when you are setting up the meeting, you can choose among your attendees who's a regular attendee and who's, for example, a panelist. So once you enter that person's email, you can change their access to be that of a panelist. And so they have greater control. They can, share their screen, and they have, and they can have more audio and video options. Okay. And now, if you have any more questions, please enter them in the chat. Otherwise, I want to post a couple links. So please help us with feedback with our post-event survey. You can follow the link right there. Your feedback is very invaluable to us and helps make our programs better. So, in the event survey, you can also tell us what topics you'd like to see in the future, and we'll do our best to include that in our curriculum in future programs. And then for future digital literacy classes and other virtual events, including our upcoming How the Internet Works, here's a link to our virtual programming page. And also, here's a link to our digital literacy playlist, which has all of our YouTube videos of past programs, past digital literacy programs and more, available for you to view and peruse at your leisure. Thank you so much for attending, and I hope to see you at the next digital literacy program.